There is a difference between Main Street economics and Wall Street economics. Wall Street's driven by data. Main Street is driven by personal feeling. And 6 months into his presidential term, President Trump appears to be winning on the economy on every measurable metric. Just look at the first 6 months compared to Joe Biden's. Inflation, unemployment are down. Median weekly wages and household income are higher. Partisan media outlets and economists told us Trump would crash the stock market, and in fact, he hasn't. The major indices are up big since he first took office, at or near records, and understandably, there's surprised some folks, including CNBC.
Senator Elizabeth Warren will come on and say inflation's out of control and the economy is getting killed by what's happening by these tariffs. But none of these horrible things have happened, but they still talk like it's happening.
There's an important lesson there. Don't pick a congressman to be your money manager. That's what I would say.
Well, and there's been some pretty good congressional money managers. We'll get to those who are trading stocks in a minute. But right now, back to President Trump and Republicans. They risk making the same mistake, learning the same hard lesson that Joe Biden and Democrats did last year. The American economy is roaring, but there is a group of Americans who aren't feeling it. They're still feeling the pinch at home. And like Biden, Trump is not necessarily now talking about how he feels their pain.
Prices are way down. Fuel is down. Groceries are down. Things like eggs are way down. Real disposable family income is up, and personal savings are up. Other than that, we're not doing so great.
All of those are great things. But you can't tell people who are hurting economically that everything is fine. And there is somebody who Donald Trump is getting ready to blame. We know that because he keeps talking about the Federal Reserve chairman, saying him not lowering interest rates will be the real problem.
It's all because of the Fed. He's done a bad job. Now, he's got a meeting today, but I call him too late. You know, he's always too late.
Trump argues that lower interest rates will correct the real economic warning signs that are now flashing red and will save people a lot of pain. If interest rates come down, credit card rates go down. Right now, credit card delinquencies, meaning late payments, are rising. They have passed pre-COVID levels. Wall Street Journal reports the number of people taking out new credit cards just fell for the first time in a year. A growing number of Americans are turning to buy now, pay later apps to cover everyday necessities. Think about this. A quarter of consumers, 25% of Americans, now use buy now, pay later to buy groceries. That's up 14% from last year. Then there was the strong GDP report. That's Wall Street numbers. The president and his administration and conservative financial gurus, understandably, rightfully, are bringing out the champagne.
We have no inflation. We have nothing but cash coming in.
The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ are at record highs or at or near those. So it's hard to see anything to complain about.
Main Street already has confidence and optimism coming back.
I love GDP. I like wages. I like inflation. I like it all.
And to be fair, there's not much not to like. But there is a disconnect between what they're saying on cable news versus how real Americans are feeling. 53% of Americans feel behind where they thought they would be financially. Half say they're unable to put money away towards savings. 79% say the cost of groceries is going up. Leading the charge, beef, coffee, eggs, and household utilities. All of them are rising. And here's how the Trump administration responds to those numbers.
The bottom line is that we highly are confident, as we saw in this release, where personal income grew, real income grew by 3%, that wages are going to grow a lot faster than anything that happens to prices. Prices are not going to be inflationary.
That may all be true. But high prices don't sit right with people. They never will. Joe Biden, we all remember, tried to gaslight Americans into thinking his economy was strong. He kept telling us how great the numbers were. Trump made personal economics and the pain the people in America were feeling the focus of his campaign, and he won. Republicans cannot and should not ignore the economic pain that so much of America feels.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.